Hey, good evening, Midwest Survivor. So, I said I was sorry. Why can't you just forgive me? That is tonight's dinner chat topic. First off, I want to say thank you to our 36 subscribers. We are 14 away from the big giveaway. So, once we hit 50, we're going to do a big giveaway. There'll be a first prize, second prize, third prize, and then also each of the first 50 subscribers are going to win a free 20-minute coaching session with me, Midwest Survivor. So be sure to click like and subscribe, and also refer me to other friends and people that might be interested in dinner chat, because it's not about just talking. It's about learning to not just survive, but learning how to thrive. So tonight's dinner chat is when forgiveness is used to avoid accountability. And have you ever heard that phrase? I said I was sorry, why can't you just forgive me? That is a hook. That is an avoidance. So, someone has hurt you, and you finally confront what has happened. And instead of talking about what needs to change, what needs to happen, suddenly the conversation becomes about your willingness to forgive. Why are you holding a grudge? Why you need to let this go? You're living in the past. If you really forgave me, you wouldn't bring it up again. And sometimes, especially in families, relationships, or religious communities, it gets even heavier. The Bible says you need to forgive. God says you need to forgive. But here's the question that nobody wants to talk about. What if forgiveness is being demanded because somebody doesn't want accountability? And that is the crux of tonight's dinner chat. So let's talk about it. Let's open it up. Forgiveness and accountability are not enemies. We talk about forgiveness and we talk about accountability, but they are not enemies. You don't have to choose one. You don't have to pick one over the other. You can forgive someone and still expect them to acknowledge what they did. You can release bitterness and still have boundaries. You can stop seeking revenge and still say, what happened was not okay, and I refuse to accept it. Forgiveness deals with what you are carrying inside your heart and inside your mind. Accountability actually deals with the behavior, and those are completely different things. I'm sorry is not the magic erase and rewind button. Apologies are powerful. Apologies are necessary. And when they are tender and sincere and genuine, they can heal a lot of wounds. But saying I'm sorry does not magically erase the consequences and the choices. Imagine somebody repeatedly lies to you. They apologize. Then they lie again. They apologize again. And eventually, trust begins to break down, and the relationship begins to break down. Eventually, you say, I don't trust you anymore. Then they respond, but I apologize. Yes, you did apologize. But trust isn't rebuilt through apologies alone. Trust is rebuilt through consistent behavior that happens over time. An apology can open the door to restoration. Change behavior is what helps rebuild what was damaged. So watch what happens after the apology, after the words have been said. One of the best things to evaluate when in an apology is watch what happens next. Do they become curious about how they hurt you? Do they accept responsibility? Do they try to repair the damage? Do they try to change their behavior? Or does the apology immediately become leverage? I already apologize. What else do you want? You're never satisfied. You're just wanting to punish me. Those are things worth noticing. A sincere apology isn't about escaping consequences. It's about acknowledging the mistakes that were made, acknowledging the harm or the injuries done, and working to repair and fix the relationship. Forgiveness does not mean pretending that it never happened. Now, this is a very common misconception that continually hurts people every day. That is this misconception. If you forgave me, you'd forget about it. Human beings do not work that way. And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard it said, well, you need to forgive and forget and move on. Well, I'm sorry, there are things that you just cannot forget. It's impossible. You can forgive someone and still learn from what happened. And if somebody betrays your trust, wisdom may require you to behave differently afterward. And that is not bitterness. That is not hatred. That is just simply good, solid, common sense wisdom and learning. Forgiveness does not require amnesia. I'm going to say that again. Forgiveness does not require amnesia. Forgiveness doesn't automatically restore trust. Now, this is a big one. Forgiveness can sometimes be given freely, but trust is entirely different. Trust is a bridge that is built. And when trust is broken, rebuilding it requires time, honesty, consistency, transparency, accountability, and change behavior. I can tell you that over the course of time, I had trust that was broken. And the people that broke my trust fully expected me to just forgive them and to move on. However, trust was broken severely and was broken for years. And it was just expected of me to forget it and move on. And I just got to the point where I couldn't do it. And you can forgive somebody today and still say, I'm not ready to trust you the way I did before. Those statements can coexist. Forgiveness doesn't guarantee reconciliation. Forgiveness and reconciliation aren't identical either. Reconciliation requires participation from both people. If one person says, I forgive you, the other one says, I did nothing wrong, I'm not changing, you need to get over it and move on. That is no foundation at all for rebuilding any kind of relationship. Reconciliation requires honesty, transparency, accountability, safety, respect, and a willingness to work together from both sides of the bridge. You can forgive someone without restoring the relationship to exactly what it was. Here's another one. You're living in the past. Sometimes bringing up the past unnecessarily can damage relationships. If something has genuinely been addressed, and it has been addressed, taken care of, and moved on from, consistently weaponizing it and digging it up isn't healthy. But there's another side. Some people say you're living in the past, but when the past is still happening in the present, that is not discussing ancient history. That is a pattern, that is a cycle, that is a very toxic behavior that needs to be addressed and addressed correctly. There's a difference between letting go of an old mistake and recognizing behavior that has never actually changed. Religious forgiveness can be misused and abused and lead to further hurt. This deserves careful attention. Forgiveness is a very deeply important in many faith and church and religious traditions. Spiritual language should never be a weapon or a way to shortcut around accountability. When someone hurts another person, the injured person speaks up. Then they're told, you're supposed to forgive. Maybe forgiveness is important, but what happened to the other person that caused the harm? What about repentance, turning away from those things? What about honesty, restitution, change behavior? What about protecting the person who was injured? If all the spiritual responsibility gets placed on the injured person while nothing is required from the person who caused the damage, then everything is completely misaligned, mutated, and out of balance. Churches and families can protect reputation through forced forgiveness. This happens in families and churches and in business organizations too. Someone has raised legitimate concerns about a situation or a person. Leadership becomes uncomfortable with the dialogue and the discussion. Suddenly the conversation becomes, you don't need to be a troublemaker, we need unity, we don't need to be divisive, You need to forgive. Let's move forward. Think about the reputation of the organization, the company, whatever the case may be. Moving forward is wonderful. You need to just do it. But you cannot genuinely move forward by refusing to examine what actually happened and what occurred to someone else. But you cannot genuinely move forward by refusing to examine what happened. Sometimes organizations just want compliance. They don't want genuine forgiveness because accountability can be uncomfortable, embarrassing, and lead to an image problem that the organization doesn't want to address. By protecting an institution's reputation, it should not be more important than protecting innocent people's hearts, minds, and emotions. Leadership should be able to say, if something is wrong, we need to address it, correct it, and make sure that it never happens again. And as I said before, families do this too. Families often use forgiveness to preserve the unhealthy family cycle system. This is still your mother. This is still your father. That's your brother. That's your sister. You only get one family. You just need to forgive us. You just need to forget about it. You just need to move on. But being family does not eliminate accountability. In fact, families should create a greater responsibility to treat each other well. You can forgive a family member and still establish healthy, transparent, clear, concise boundaries. You can love somebody and limit their access to your life. You can want peace without pretending that something was acceptable. Accountability is not revenge. Some people hear accountability and automatically imagine that there is punishment, and accountability is not what that really means. Accountability can simply sound like, you know what, that was my choice, I did that, it was my mistake. Or listen, I was wrong, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. I understand why what happened hurt you. Listen, I'm sorry that this hurt you. I'm sorry I did this. What can we do? What can I do to repair this and make sure it never happens again? Or here's a very important one. I'm going to work on changing my behavior to make sure I don't hurt you again. This is not humiliation. It's maturity, wisdom, and learning from your mistakes. Accountability isn't about forcing someone to suffer forever. It's about taking ownership and owning your mistakes. Boundaries aren't unforgiveness. Here's another major misconception. You say, I don't want you speaking to me like that anymore. And someone responds, I thought you forgave me. You can forgive them and still have that boundary. You can say, I forgive you, but if yelling stops, this conversation ends right here. And that is not a punishment. That is protecting yourself from repeated unhealthy interaction. Forgiveness doesn't mean giving somebody unlimited opportunities, unlimited access to continually hurt you, abuse you, misuse you, and mistreat you. You can respect yourself and set a boundary and say, you're not doing this anymore, and this is going to end right here and there. Be careful with forced forgiveness. Forgiveness is a very deeply personal and emotional feeling. The people process serious hurt differently. Pressuring someone to immediately say, I forgive you before they've even processed what has happened can sometimes create more confusion. People need time. They need to process. They need to think about things. They need to recognize things. They may need distance. They may need counseling, support, and direction. They may need to understand what happened before deciding what forgiveness means to them. Healing shouldn't become about setting a timeline, a deadline that is imposed by somebody else that is just wanting to move on. Accountability goes both ways. Here's where we need balance. It's easy to listen to this dinner chat and think, I know somebody who needs to hear this. But maybe we need to hear it too. Have you ever apologized because we wanted the argument to just disappear rather than because we understood the hurt? Have we ever said, why can't you just let this go? Because we didn't want to face something we did. Have we ever demanded grace while refusing to change? Accountability isn't something we demand only from other people. It is when we want healthy relationships that we want to practice it and implement it ourselves. So here's what real repair looks like. Imagine somebody saying, I understand why you're hurt. I'm not going to tell you how quickly you should get over this. You know what? I'm going to take responsibility for what I did. I know saying sorry doesn't automatically restore your trust and faith in me. I'm going to show you through my behavior that I'm serious about changing. Those are completely honest and sincere statements as long as the actions back them up. Because now forgiveness isn't being demanded. Repair is being pursued. And healthy relationships need more than just words. They need evidence. So what can we take away from this? Forgiveness is powerful and deeply emotional and sincere when it is done correctly and with a good heart. But forgiveness should never become a weapon just to silence accountability and to preserve the image of an organization, individuals, or family members. You can forgive and remember. You can forgive and establish boundaries. You can forgive and require change behavior before restoring trust. You can forgive and decide reconciliation isn't currently a healthy choice. You can forgive and decide and believe deeply in forgiveness while still saying what happened needs to be addressed. An apology without accountability can become another vicious cycle that crushes and dismembers emotionally and mentally the people affected by the hurt and the person inflicting the wounds. Forgiveness without boundaries can just become permission to keep hurting people. And reconciliation without change is simply return everyone to the same situation that caused the hurt. So here's some things I want you to remember. Forgiveness never erases accountability. Forgiveness never automatically restores trust. Forgiveness never requires unlimited access. And most importantly, real accountability doesn't demand that you forget what happened. It gives you a reason to believe it won't keep happening. So here's tonight's community question for dinner chat. Have you ever had someone demand forgiveness while refusing to take accountability and responsibility for what they did? And have you ever been told, if you really forgave me, you wouldn't keep bringing this up? So what do you believe the line is genuinely between forgiving someone and allowing the same behavior to continue? And that is tonight's big question. Can true reconciliation without accountability and change behavior? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Be respectful, be kind to everybody. Forgiveness means different things to different people, particularly when faith, family, and relationships and serious harm are involved. Remember, Midwest Survivor, I want you to leave here healthy, encouraged, strong, and remember, please share your thoughts in the comments. Click like and subscribe on the channel. We are 14 away from the big giveaway. Reach out to me here on the community, on Facebook, on Instagram and X. And if you're in need of coaching services, I'll be more than happy to reach out to you anytime. Within reason, we'll work something out. And remember, it's not about surviving, but it's learning how to thrive every day of your life. So as I'm going to leave you just as I always leave you, get healthy, be healthy, stay healthy, get strong, stay strong, be strong, and remember, it's not about surviving, it's learning how to thrive. Y'all take care, have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow morning for Breakfast Bits.